Welcome back to the show, and we're here for part 2 of Brad Garlinghouse at DCFintechWeek. And again, every bit of this is fire. If you haven't seen part 1, go watch that. There's also some highlights and video clips from Ripple Swell that you're absolutely going to want. But let's go ahead and get started. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, it is $1.43 trillion market cap for crypto, and the market is up 3.1%. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Right now, 37,000 slightly over for Bitcoin, 1,900 and change for Ethereum, $86.7 billion market cap for USD Tether. XRP is 68 cents, off by 0.8 in the 24-hour, but still up by 10% on the 7-day. Let's look at the range of price. We're at 68 cents, ranging between 67 and 70 cents. We know above 66 cents is a great place to be, so hopefully we hold that and continue to play out the way the technical analysts are telling us it should. So we'll keep an eye on that. Link to, ladies and gentlemen, is the best place to get private equity. You can do that today if you just click the link, go sign up and register and get started. Over 426,000 registered users, can't be wrong. If you're not one of them, all you have to do is sign up and register and get started today. Click the link underneath before all the Ripple is gone, or Link 2, or Glint, or Uphold, and all the other incredible products that they have. Now let's get right to it because there's quite a bit left to this, and I want you to have all of it without the video getting too long today. This is Brad Garlinghouse on fire. You'll hear him discussing whether or not he would go to the Supreme Court right at the end of this clip here. But if you haven't seen the first half, go watch the video from this morning, and let's get right to this. And shout out to Brad Garlinghouse, and I think it's Kaylee, and I can't remember her last name, but shout out to her anyway, and forgive me if I've messed her name up because she conducts an incredible interview here, and I'm grateful for that as well. So take a listen. Here we go.
That is a good thing. I mean, the current Supreme Court, we'd love to see the Vegas odds on how that would go.
Me too.
They haven't been super friendly to regulators, I think is what you're alluding to.
They have not been friendly to regulators, no. And so, and that goes back to my earlier point. I don't know if the SEC will choose to appeal this decision. Mm-hmm. If they do, I think it risks to them amplifying, something that they're not yet saying. I think it'd be more constructive for the SEC and even the industry just to say, look, okay, let's step back, let's reevaluate. As you know, I'm going from here to Dubai. Other regulators around the world, we have been in this dialogue. I've been talking to other regulators around the world for years, and there's an open dialogue. There's a constructive dialogue. The U.S. used to be looked at as a leader from securities regulation and protecting consumers. I think it's become a political liability. The way the SEC has approached this in the United States, we are looked at here in the U.S. relative to other countries as stuck, we are not leading, and even worse, it's just kind of looked at, the other countries are absolutely leading. The UK, I happen to be going to the UAE later today, but I could name 5 or 6 countries, Japan, even Australia, Switzerland, Singapore. These are all countries that are leading, and by virtue of that, you're seeing capital investment, you're seeing entrepreneurs set up shop in those countries because the rules are clear.
I want to come back to that rest of the world versus the U.S. point, but just to clarify something quickly, because you just said you'll take it to the Supreme Court if you have to. You will ride this out, fight it in the court until it is done if the SEC appeals. There's no chance that you would end up settling in some way.
Well, that's a slightly different question.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a little bit about this publicly now. I was offered the ability to settle prior to they didn't just sue Ripple, they sued me.
Yes.
And they sued
dropped
Larson.
that now, right?
That has all been all dropped with prejudice. And so, look, that feels really good. Asterisk, it feels like, how did we end up here? What you sued me as if it was clear I had to knowingly know that XRP was a security and act recklessly to not know. Again, people here in the law know more about this than I do, but there was no chance they were going to win that. And they're pushing it the way they did. It just feels like the SEC should be part of the solution. Other countries, it's no problem. And you joke, I think you were joking to my meeting with the SEC today. In another country, that wouldn't, I've met with central banks. I've met with, you name the regulator, and it's kind of like, yeah, no problem. In an open meeting, open dialogue, we talk about what Ripple's doing. We talk about our view on the crypto industry. No problem. Here in the U.S., it's like, it's like, oh, the laws are clear.
Listen.
But yet we can't answer, is ETH a security?
Boom.
Yeah, that's something that the chairman has still not actually
I don't know
expressed
if you're
an
interviewing
opinion
today,
on.
but ask him again today.
Maybe I'll find him behind the curtain somewhere. I'll let you know. Okay, so let's go back to the U.S., the rest of the world topic, as you were just discussing it there. Where do you think the best example is being set? What should the U.S. be trying to replicate? Or does the U.S. just need to be doing something different, but taking that regulatory approach differently?
I partly because they're a close economic and political partner to the U.S. The United Kingdom, the UK, I think has been very constructive on crypto, and that when I say that, they're not. Again, Chair Gensler likes to talk about crypto as the Wild West. It is absolutely not the Wild West. Ripple is a regulated company in many jurisdictions around the world. In Singapore, we have our license from MAS as a major payments provider. In the UK, we have, in Dubai, we've applied for the virtual asset regulatory, VARA, I can't remember what the A stands for. But, it's not the Wild West, and I think it's a narrative.
It'll come back here. 1 second.
To promote, I guess, a political agenda as opposed to sound policy. And, I think there's still time for the U.S. to remain a key leader in this space. And some of the most important crypto companies in the world are based here in the United States. But, if Brian Armstrong were up here today, I think he would say as well, does he wish he had gone public in a different jurisdiction in the United States? And the SEC approved his S1, but then sued him for doing things they knew he was doing. How does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you just said you think there is still time for the U.S. to be a leader. How much time is still time?
Yeah.
Where in the hourglass are we?
Well, I want to be realistic about this. The United States is 23% of global GDP. If the U.S. gets its act together years from now, it's such an important economic actor that it feels like that option always exists because of where the U.S. stands in a global GDP point of view. And it is really the finance capital of the world. But there are other finance capitals of the world.
That's right.
And certainly Dubai is trying to emerge even more so. Singapore for sure, London for sure. And not surprisingly, I've said publicly, 80% of Ripple's hiring this year will be outside the United States. And it's partly because, why would I want to hire more and more people in the United States when the U.S. is making it hostile for me to operate here? And even with the SEC case, we have U.S. banks as customers. And, I've talked to them post the SEC case. And I say, okay, so great, now we have a product called on-demand liquidity, which uses XRP. And so I'll go to those banks and say, should we engage on that topic? And they're like, look, even though you won the case, the United States government is still hostile towards crypto. Mm-hmm. The OCC is hostile towards crypto. And until that changes, the banks of the United States are not going to engage meaningfully. So
now, very quickly inside of that, because I don't want to interrupt this many times, but I need to say this here. This is why I believe we go all the way to the Supreme Court. He didn't highlight the problems we've had with the SEC. He highlighted the OCC, right? The Office of Comptroller of Currency is pushing back, but you haven't heard them push back. That's coming from the banks sitting down with Brad and Ripple and telling them where they're getting pressure from. And until that backs off, things with the United States banking system are not going to change in a meaningful way. So this is why I believe that going all the way to the Supreme Court is what needs to happen here. This isn't just the SEC. This is the OCC as well.
I don't think the window has passed for the U.S. to be a leader, but I think every day that goes by, these other markets, they want the entrepreneurs there.
And very quickly, I got to say this because he's about to bring up London being the second largest office that Ripple has. And remember, what happened in London? Uphold has clearance and license from UK Financial Conduct Authority. Who did Ripple just recently partner with? Uphold. And how did they do that? By really bringing and going live in December, according to Simon McLaughlin, the CEO of Uphold, Ripple Liquidity Hub. That's what they've done with Uphold. And financial institutions will be able to use it without holding it or touching it or anything and get the benefit of it through a relationship and partnership between Ripple and Uphold. Keep your eye on London and watch his face as he says it right now.
Want growth, and again, I'm mentioning Singapore, London, and Dubai as three key examples, but I mean, the Ripple's London office is our second largest office. Going to engage meaningfully there. They want growth, and again, I'm mentioning Singapore, London, and Dubai as three key examples, but I mean, the Ripple's London office is our second largest office.
Well, that's a really good point. And to your point of you're hiring a lot internationally, these are long-term decisions you're making. These are long-term investments. So even if things were to get friendlier in the U.S., would you all of a sudden shift back here? How are you thinking about the long term for Ripple?
Well, look, I mean, a majority of our employees are still U.S. based. I think eventually, if you zoom out far enough, none of this stuff barely existed 10 or 12 years ago.
Fair.
So if you zoom out far enough, do I think 10 years from now the U.S. is going to figure this out and have a constructive regulatory framework for crypto? 1,000%. Yeah, so that's 10 years. Okay, what about 5? I don't know where I would go as we rewind, but I remain a long-term optimist. I was in Silicon Valley for about 25 years. I moved a couple of years ago. But better technologies almost always win in the end. And I truly believe blockchain technologies are a path to reducing friction for financial transactions to the benefit of many industries. And the irony, and you and I were talking about this backstage a little bit, for some reason, crypto has become a little bit of a partisan issue. When I first came to Washington, and as Chris said, I've been coming here 4 or 5 years, it was a totally bipartisan issue. And for some reason, recently, it's come a little bit partisan towards Republicans being more open and constructive, saying, okay, let's pass this legislation. The irony to me around that is one of the core benefits around crypto, particularly around payments, are customers who can least afford the cost of remittances are actually burdened the most. So I'm talking about immigrant populations sending millions, billions of dollars into other countries, and they're paying, the World Bank would say 600 to 700 basis points. That's outrageous. Again, so for me, it's surprising that it is not more bipartisan and that we would have seen kind of something pass already. But again, I think there's still hope, and I think now that we have a Speaker of the House, maybe we'll make progress.
Maybe. They have to figure out, how to fund the government in the next 9 days as well. So they have quite a lot that they're dealing with. But to your point, if it doesn't happen this Congress with this lead of the House Financial Services Committee, obviously they've passed a few bills out of committee, stablecoin legislation, a market structure bill as well. If they can't get it done before the next election, what does that mean?
I don't really know. What I mean by that is I don't know that the presidential politics, I haven't heard either of Biden or Trump really speak about this. I mean, I think Trump once tweeted about Bitcoin or something years ago.
He would Truth Social it now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. But so I don't really have an opinion on that. I view this as a bipartisan issue. It's good for the United States to have constructive engagement with next generational exponential technologies that truly can have dramatically positive impacts on our economy to the benefit of citizens. And the U.S., if you go back in the history books, the fact that the U.S. passed clear legislative solutions around the internet in the late 90s allowed massive amounts of capital and entrepreneurs. I mean, you think about that, I think we're hosted by AWS here. The largest, most important internet companies are based in the United States. The geopolitical benefit to the United States, not just economic, has been massive because we created the right environment for entrepreneurs and capital to flow into a next generational technology framework. Blockchain is a next generational technology framework. It is going to touch many, many industries. I would agree with people who say, well, right now there's too much speculation. I agree. We need more clear, constructive uses of these technologies to solve industry problems. But you're seeing more and more companies doing that, and you're seeing more and more traction. the United States should get behind that. We want these technologies to emanate here. We want to have that. And for whatever reasons, I think the SEC is part of the problem there. We have been hostile.
What you hear, and you talk about how this is becoming somewhat of a partisan issue. I've spoken with a lot of Democratic lawmakers, crypto skeptics about this, and they cite fraud often, that a lot of people are defrauded through crypto scams. Also things, questioning whether or not blockchain ultimately really does anything new that can't be done already, that it's just trying to recreate something for no good reason and potentially bad things come with it. How much more work needs to be done to push back against that kind of narrative?
Well, I mean, the fraud point, and again, you and I talked a little about this backstage. The FTX fraud wasn't a crypto fraud. I mean, yes, it was a fraud. I don't know, like it absolutely wasn't unique that this happened to crypto. There's other frauds that, in some cases, were even a bigger scale than what happened there. So
listen what he says.
When I hear people say, "Well, we need legislative solutions around." To prevent FTX. It's like, well, maybe if Gary Gensler and the SEC weren't so focused on going after Ripple and meeting openly with Sam Bankman-Fried, maybe we could have actually avoided some of that, right? I don't know. I mean, Gensler won't comment on his meetings he had with SBF, so I don't really know what that's all about. But it strikes me those aren't the laws we need to clarify. Fraud laws are there, and there's many jurisdictions. You have Chair Benham from the CFTC, there's fraud. I mean, there's lots of ways you can address that. And obviously, Sam Bankman-Fried, I think, is probably going to go to jail. I know the sentencing hasn't happened.
Yeah. But guilty on all 7 counts.
Correct. So I don't think that's the core of the problem. I think, but to the other part of your problem, like the people who say there's not enough real utility, I mean, look, I kind of agree with that. There's a lot of excitement, and there should be. But that also was true in the earliest days of the internet. There's a birth, just an explosion of entrepreneurial activity that did result in the dot-com bust, but then you still have emerged from that Google and Amazon and Meta. There's no doubt in my mind these technologies, because they actually can be used to rewire how transactions happen. There's immense friction in how cross-border payments happen, where Ripple's focused. But there's immense friction in real estate, in bond settlement. There's ways to use these technologies. And by the way, I use those examples. Those aren't things Ripple's doing, but just it's more advocating for the industry at large.
Well, let's talk about Ripple, though, and the utility there. What's institutional adoption looking like?
Outside the United States, it's been great. I mean, look,
I'm sensing a theme here.
I mean, it was a dark time. When Ripple got sued.
1 second, it'll come back here.
December 22nd, 2020. Q1 of 2021, we didn't know it was going to happen. Outside of the United States, regulators were like, we don't understand what the SEC is doing, and we continued. 2021 and 2022 were some of our best years ever. The primary measure we use to measure growth.
1 second.
Tens of millions to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of transactions at a time when we're in the middle of this massive lawsuit with the SEC. So other countries, again, have engaged constructively. They see how these technologies can be used to improve payment flows. They see how cross-border settlement works today. It's slow. It's expensive. I mean, actually, the head of the Italian central bank, I'm forgetting his name right now, he just wrote an opinion piece in the Financial Times about how broken cross-border payments are. It's 2023, and these are technologies that actually the U.S. is trying to stymie. It doesn't make sense.
So I know you always would rather focus on XRP utility rather than speculation, but do you have a thought on, I believe it's been bid up 30% in the last month?
Crypto overall has been up. I mean,
Fair.
Bitcoin hit a low of, I think, 16 or 17,000. Now it's, I think, at 35,000. XRP definitely has been on a rally. Look, if I had a magical window into what drives crypto prices, I probably would quit this job and just go do that. Look, I take a very long view. The big picture around these technologies, I'm very much a multi-chain viewpoint. Like, yes, XRP is extremely good at some use cases, and payments is clearly one. But I think there are lots of other blockchains that can be used for other purposes that it's not going to be one winner to take it all.
I'm already bracing myself for when I go check Twitter after this to see everything the XRP Army had to say about this conversation.
There is a passionate advocate group. And
You could say that, yes.
look, I think that is a good thing. There's obviously a very passionate advocate group around Bitcoin. I will say, and I say this to anyone who will listen, like the ideologues and the kind of the maximalism that happens in crypto, I think is counterproductive to crypto. And when I see people advocating of like, it's all Bitcoin or it's all XRP or something, I'm just like, no, it's not. And I think we all have to come together. And frankly, one of the silver linings of the Ripple case with the SEC has been the industry realizing like, this was important for the industry.
That's right.
Yes, it was great for Ripple, and frankly, it was nice for Brad Garlinghouse to have the case dropped. But it's important for the industry, and the grayscale decision, I think it's incredibly important for the whole industry to come together and agree on things here in Washington to catalyze that legislative solution that we haven't yet seen.
All right, we're going to have to leave it on that note. Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, thank you so much.
What a great, candid conversation there, and shout out to both of them for bringing it together. Now, I want to tell you about this really quickly as well. Today in the Freedom Zone, we're going to be talking about that country that has a red flag and how a new U.S. bill is coming out acknowledging that they need to be stopped when it comes to blockchains and other issues like Tether. We're going to get deep into that today inside the Freedom Zone. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't forget, you also get 0 Google ads in these videos, right? This is the daily content plus extra content in here and a remarkable conversation from some really bright people too. So join it. Less than a cup of coffee, cost of a cup of coffee per month. You can be inside of here as well and taking advantage of all the insights and the extra content that's in here. We're keeping the conversation going. Free speech inside of the Freedom Zone, and it's censorship free. That's what we love about it. We hope to see you inside too. Join us. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. We'll catch all of you on the next one.